Welcome back, everybody. I hope you're all well. In today's podcast, we're going to be looking at a letter that was sent to Dave Baumhover. Sandi and Frank Sr. both sent a letter to Detective Dave Baumhover explaining their thoughts and feelings about Chris whilst he was being investigated. We're going to have a look into the insights of the thoughts and the feelings of both of them around that period of time. So sit back, relax, grab a drink and some popcorn, and we will begin. The idea behind the podcast is I wanted to make them audio only, so you can sit back, relax and listen to them, or you can put them on whilst you go to bed. Instead of counting sheep and trying to get to sleep, you can listen to my voice. A lot of people have asked for these podcasts and I enjoy doing them. So today's podcast is sponsored by Destronic, as always. If you need a motorized desk, go to destronic.co.uk, use code PADDY, and they'll give you a discount. Also, check out all the socials. And very soon, Patreon will be getting some exclusive videos that are too sensitive for YouTube. Discovery page 1399. If any of you need to find this in the Discovery, that is the page number. Frank Ruzick Sr., June 21st to 26th. I noticed Chris was acting differently with the girls. He was yelling at them, raising his voice, which made me look at him like, what are you doing? Also, when Shanann would FaceTime him, which she did every day while she was here on vacation, she would ask him if he was going to pay any attention to the girls. He was looking like he was looking at something else. When he came here for the last week of the vacation, the girls wouldn't go to him. They would go to their mum. He didn't like that at all. He had a look on his face like he was mad at them. I went to the beach with them for the first 3 days, and Celeste would say, "That's my truck," talking about Papa's truck. He said, "I have a truck too." And she said, "But that's my truck," talking about Papa's. The first night he was strange. He came out and he lay on the floor in the living room where I was sleeping on the couch. I was watching TV, and when I shut the TV off, he sat up and he said, "What are you doing?" He said that he had a backache and it would help him, and that it was strange for me to lay on the floor. Thinking about it, he was acting kind of distant because the girls wanted me more than him. He looked like he didn't care and his mind was somewhere else. Frank Ruzick. That's Frank's own words. So that is Frank's letter to Detective Baumhover, old Baumie. We all love Baumie. Unfortunately, Baumhover had PTSD and had to retire after the case. It's not surprising when you realise he had to deal with all the extraction and recovery of the bodies. So now we move on to Sandi Ruzick, Shanann's mother. When we look at the Discovery pages, it's quite obvious from earlier on that Sandi was onto Chris. She'd already been onto the detectives to let them know that she thought something was up with him. And that's from earlier on. So there's one thing with this case which I've always thought about, and it's considering he didn't have a history of violence, which we normally see in perpetrators. Chris didn't have a history of violence leading up. There was no talk of abuse, social services, nothing like that were involved. So for him to do this out the blue is mind-blowing. For her parents, fucking hell, there's going to be more outtakes in this than it is on the normal one. For Shanann's parents to be on to Chris straight away is quite telling. So let's have a look at her letter to Detective Baumhover. In 2009, Shanann built her own house in Charlotte, North Carolina. Over this period, she was battling with lupus. Her friend told her about her cousin, Chris, saying he's quite a nice guy, he's quiet, etc. So Shanann got a request from him on Facebook. Months later, she called me, saying, "Mom, I met a nice guy. He's a mechanic." I said, "As long as you're happy and he's good to you." A few months after that, Shanann and Chris had a family gathering, and Frank, I, and his parents had a cookout. They were floored when they saw her house. Shanann was a hard worker and wanted this to eventually sell and make a profit to keep doing so, eventually being mortgage-free. She comes from a family of contractors. This is Sandi's words, not mine. I'm not sure what contractors she comes from because I was under the impression that there's only Frank that was really working and he was the one that introduced her to all these MLMs, which I'll do a separate video on. But I could be wrong, so do your own research. One thing I will say is I've seen Shanann's first house with Leonard King, and the house is absolutely stunning. It's a fantastic home, really big, stands alone, huge house, fitted out to the nines. Having said that, there are some rumours around that time when she was purchasing that house. According to Chris's friend, which I won't name, but according to one of his friends, some money went missing from Dirty South. It was never proven. It was always insinuated that it could have been something to do with this property. That's not my words. That's Chris's friend's words. It's out there. It's in the public domain who his friend is, who said all that. So go and have a look yourself. I just don't want to name him here because I don't want to do drama. And he said, she said. I just thought it would be good for you to be informed in the context of what we're looking at now. Shanann was eager to please his parents, waiting on them hand and foot. When Shanann left the back porch, and it was just me and Chris's mum, she leaned over to me and said, Shanann was married before? I said, yes, just like your daughter was. Then a while later again when we were alone, and she said, I just don't see it. I said, what? She said, I don't feel or see that your daughter loves my son. I knew she was going to be a thorn in the marriage because my mother-in-law was the same way. Every time we had a cookout, his mum and his sister were very quiet, very distant. We weren't accepted. They made us know that. So forward to engagement party. Shanann and I shopped for food, wine, etc. We spent a lot. Jamie, Chris's sister, wanted all the invitations so she could help. Shanann told me, Mom, Jamie wants to help send the invitations. What do you think? Do you think she's accepting me? I'm going to let her do it. So this mom and sister prepped food and cross-contaminated everything. Shanann couldn't eat any of it. Gluten-free. Nothing. Everything was made with gluten. So thank God I made lots of food. At least my daughter could eat. Bearing in mind when I'm reading all these, you've got to remember this is from the perspective of the Ruziks, okay? From Sandi Ruzik. It's the same when I read stuff from the Watts. You've got to bear it in mind from the Watts. You've got to remember that when I read stuff from the Watts, it also applies. There's always two sides to every story, as they say. As the night went on, Shanann and I went in the bathroom. Shanann told me, Mum, I had like 80 invites and only immediate family came. So Shanann called people the next day to learn that they never received an invite. Shanann was devastated, as you would be. Shanann and Chris knew not to ask again. Then came the wedding. No one from his whole family came. Just his grandmother and his uncle. No mum, dad, sister, aunts, no cousins, no one. Chris spoiled Shanann and vice versa. They were so in love. They were a great team. They moved to Colorado and lived with Shanann's friend for 1 year whilst they were building their house. Everything was great. Shanann saw something on Chris's private parts that didn't look normal. They went to the doctors. Cancer, it says here in brackets, so I don't know whether that means he had it or not. And it was removed. She saved his life. Remember, this is Sandi's version of events. I've never come across anything in the Discovery or anything in any of the literature or evidence that Chris even mentions cancer or that Shanann even mentions cancer to her friends. So take that as you wish. I'm not sure if it's true or not. I'm not calling it a liar, but I've never seen that before. I've only ever seen it being exclaimed by Sandi. Then Shanann got pregnant with Bella. Everyone was so excited and happy. Shanann and Chris were wonderful parents. Chris and Shanann were working at the Ford dealership in Longmont. Shanann was selling cars. Chris was the head mechanic. Both a great team. Shanann was top sales. Then Bella came, so Shanann stopped working because of the high-risk pregnancy. She was a trooper, though, through the whole thing. Both families seemed happy. Chris's sister never flew to Colorado at any time that they were out there. Seems to be an awful lot of illnesses for one family, constantly. I have noticed that. I'm not trying to imply anything, but for one family, the kids were always sick, always had stuff going on. Same with Shanann, really. I will be doing an MLM deep dive on that and how they change your personality as well. Cindy and Ronnie came 2 times a year. Shanann worked at the Children's Hospital at nights and also sold 31 bags, travel bags on the side. Everything was good. Shanann got pregnant. Celeste, and the pregnancy was really rough on Shanann with her lupus. Very high-risk pregnancy again. But only this one was worst for Shanann. Water gain weight, severe back pain, shortness of breath, pains in her chest, fatigue, exhaustion. That's a run-of-the-mill pregnancy, innit? I don't know, I'm a bloke, so I wouldn't know. My husband and I sold everything but our house and moved out to live with them. We wanted to help our daughter in every way we could. Frank and I had to work to pay for our bills too. We were there for 15 months. Chris's mum came out to watch the girls for a few days. While Shanann and Chris went on a business trip with Lavelle, 4 nights and 5 days. During that time, we weren't allowed to see our grandchildren or even eat dinner with them as soon as we got home. She brought them upstairs and stayed upstairs. She wouldn't let us hold them or anything. I found that very odd. One day I asked her why. She said, "What the hell am I here for then?" She screamed in my face in front of my granddaughters. and said that I was very controlling. I was like, wow. I texted Shanann over and over again, and she said, relax, Mom. Seems like both sets of grandparents were at each other. Very, very jealous, very toxic between the two sets of grandparents, especially where children are involved. You think people would just get on with it, but I'll take care of it when we get home, she said. It was ridiculous. I never spoke to Chris's mom again. I had enough. After 15 months, I moved back home. It was hard to leave, but I felt it was for the best. I have been home now. 17 months later, my whole family is dead. My beautiful daughter and beautiful grandchildren are all dead. Everything seemed fine. Our daughter never spoke about anything bad. She did speak to us about bankruptcy and a lot of debt. It was all the medical bills. Bella and Celeste were back and forth to the doctors. Misdiagnosed for 2 years. I told Shanann that they had asthma and that she needed to fire the doctors. One day she went in and the PA was there. She diagnosed them with asthma. Other than earplugs put in and girls being very allergic to tree nuts, which would have caused them death, in brackets, that says. So, I know they changed the ingredients with Lavelle bars later on, but how can they eat Pro bars but they can't have ice cream? That's always wondered, always been in my back of my mind. Because anything to do with ice cream or dairy or anything, you have to be so careful with nuts. I know they have separate parts of the factory where everything's made nowadays because of this. It never seems to be a problem when it was Pro bars, but I don't know. It's just a weird one, like. And some people say, oh, you want to ever go to Shanann because the Pro bars ingredients were changed. I'm just saying like I see it. Can't be allergic to one thing and not another thing. It all comes under the same bracket of food, basically. It's a very, very bad thing to have. An allergy to nuts is one of the worst things you could probably have as a child, apart from a terminal illness, obviously. Celeste was born with her esophagus too small. They went in 3 times to enlarge it. Steroids like crazy to help her breathe from 1.5 years or longer. All until they were diagnosed with asthma, and then Shanann with her neck surgery, which put them out of pocket for $25,000. Oof. So they owed that. That's why there was so much debt. I noticed that when we would FaceTime every night for 4 years straight, looking back starting late May 2018, when we FaceTime, Chris was putting the phone all over the room, the ceiling, the floor. I said, Chris, are you all right? Then he would be FaceTiming normally. Before Shanann came to North Carolina, Celeste had a rash in her private area. She went to get a face cloth and some cream. Chris had the phone. I said, Chris, let me see how bad it is. It's got being that I am aid in brackets, so I don't know what that means. So I still couldn't see. I said, wait, let me move my screen because I couldn't see. He put it right on her private. Oh, I was mad. Yeah, that is a bit weird to do that. It's a bit freaky, like. Shanann wanted to come for 6 weeks in the summer so she could introduce the girls to Chris's sister, Jamie. She'd never met Celeste or Uncle Frankie, our son, before the year started back to school, dance classes, etc. It was the best time. We were thrilled. Shanann stayed the week there, then here weekends with Chris's parents. The first week was great. Chris's dad and family. However, the following weekend was a different story. Saturday was rough for Shanann. She was protecting her children from peanuts in every room. The following weekend was a different story. Saturday was rough for Shanann. She was protecting her children from peanuts in every form. Ice cream, a bowl full of nuts, and open razor blades just lying around the house. Shanann called her father, come pick me up now, please. Shanann said Cindy was trying to give the kids ice cream with peanut chips in. Shanann asked Cindy, what kind of ice cream is it? And Cindy said, oh, relax, it's just ice cream. Shanann said, please let me read the ingredients. Cindy told my daughter that she was scary, so the girls walked outside to play with Jamie, Chris's sister. But after Shanann got done explaining to Cindy how dangerous the peanut allergy is to the girls, Cindy was ignoring Shanann. Probably didn't being like told off in her own house. I wouldn't like that either, to be honest, but you know, it's a serious situation. And I'm always of the thought, and this is just speculation on my part, maybe Cindy knew that the kids weren't allergic to the nuts, and so she knew she was safe to give them the ice cream. But there's a few versions of this story. There's one version where Shanann was just jealous because of the other children, of Jamie's children, and all there was vanilla ice cream that Dylan, Jamie's son, Chris's sister's son, so Chris's nephew, was eating ice cream. and just Shanann made a fuss of it. And then there's the other version of events where Cindy was trying to kill her granddaughter, which I don't believe for 1 minute. It's not logical, is it? But there's no love lost between the two sets of grandparents, and there's no love lost between Shanann and Cindy. I think it was this one situation blown out of all proportion. It could have been any other situation, and they would have used it against each other to fall out, I think. I think Shanann was looking for a wedge to put in between them, to stop them speaking to each other, and vice versa as well. I don't think that the Watts really wanted to speak with the other side of the family. So I think they were both looking really for a way out, to not communicate anymore, when they should have just sat down, been adults, and talk things out, and just agreed to get on for the children's sake. It's not even like they lived in the same town, but emotions were running high, so I suppose maybe in time they would have sorted things out, but they didn't have a chance to because of what Chris done in the end. So that's my version of it. That's my view on it. You can research it yourself and have a look into Nutgate and see. I just think that one incident, could have been any other reason for them both to get at each other. Both sides. I'm not playing one side against the other. I'm saying they're both to blame. And obviously Shanann didn't deserve to be murdered over it, but she set the ball rolling as soon as she cut off the Watts, I think. I think that affected Chris. So as much as we want to blame Nicole Kessinger for getting involved, I think Chris not being able to communicate with his parents was just as much a catalyst in it all. Put in the comments what you think over that, because I think they just wanted to. Shanann called her father. Come and pick me up, please. Shanann said Cindy was trying to give the kids ice cream with peanut chips in. Shanann asked Cindy what kind of ice cream is it. So after Shanann got done explaining to Cindy how dangerous a peanut allergy is to the girls, Cindy ignored Shanann. She went outside with Jamie walked in, so the girls walked back in, and as Shanann walked in the kitchen, she noticed a large bowl of peanuts now sitting on the table. They weren't there 2 minutes before. So if they have been put there, and that is the truth, then obviously it was done to wind her up. So I could totally understand why Shanann went off the deep end then. Chris spent the day with his parents, and Shanann dropped him off at the nursing home to see his grandma. Shanann and the girls came back here. Chris was acting really weird to Shanann. He didn't have time to speak to her, and then he was going to stay because we had a storm. We had no street lights. Chris's dad brought him back here to our home. Shanann and Chris spoke on our back porch for a few hours. They spoke about how he has been and the peanut stuff and his mom's house. Chris was distant to Shanann, but was okay with the girls and with us. Shanann was vomiting all night, and Chris didn't get up to see how he was, and this is his wife. This is possibly where the Oxley story comes in, that she was ill and he tried to poison her. It's up to you what you want to think about that. There's the other version where Shanann asked him to bring oxy medication, meaning her lupus medication. There's the version where Chris tried to poison her with oxy. He said that in his book, or Sherilyn Cadle's book, but we know that's all lies, most of it. So there's always conflicting information. Whether it's from Chris or Cadle or the families, no one seems to be able to tell the truth. Not totally, anyway. This is just my thinking, so you can think what you want, guys. I'm just trying to look at it logically and from all angles. They left for Myrtle Beach, and Frank went with them for a couple of days. Being that it was our granddaughter's first time at Myrtle Beach. Myrtle Beach, the one with Doc, what's his name? Tiger King and all that. I'm sure it is. Isn't it that one with Doc and his 7 wives or whatever, and he breeds those tigers? Is that Doc in Florida in Myrtle Beach? Am I right? Put in the comments if I'm right. Bogadan or something, his name is, isn't it? Doc Bogadan. And he thinks he's a god among men, and he's allowed all these wives. Basically, just leader of a cult, isn't he? His own little cult. A bit like an MLM. Anyway, I digress. I came a day and a half, and the girls had a blast. Chris was very quiet, doing his own thing and ignoring Shanann. I said to my daughter, is everything okay? And she said, well, Chris is Chris. We were at the beach and we went to dinner. Chris drove Shanann and the girls, and there was no room, so I drove behind them. I was doing 83 miles an hour to catch up with them. Texting Shanann, why is he driving like that? Tell him to slow down. I'm not in a race to go to dinner. At dinner, Chris left the table quite a few times, very silent. He was ignoring his kids and his wife. Cece was being funny and he walked away. I left the next day and I came back 2 days later. I asked Shanann to stay here with the girls, and she said, Chris has good insurance for the girls. They went back home to Colorado. I'm not sure what that implies, that he's got good insurance. I don't know what that means. I'm devastated. The only reason Chris got fit was because diabetes run high in his family, and Shanann wanted him to live forever. Bit of a contrast considering what happened and the other way around. But like I say, they're implying there that Chris had diabetes in the family. There's always some sort of illness going on. There's always something wrong medically with one of them. And it's just a weird set of behavior to be when you're hypochondriac like that. I don't know if anyone agrees with me. Put in the comments, do you agree with me that there was an awful lot of medical things wrong or perceived to be wrong? There was all something medical conditions or medical things were being discussed constantly with this family. No matter how way you want to look at it, I'm not blaming anyone one side or the other, but the whole family, both sides, there's always medical things. They were either very, very lucky or someone was overly cautious when it came to the medical situation. And that ultimately didn't help with the financial situation. So it's another part of the story that leads into it all. So that is Sandi's letter to Detective Baumhover. It gives you a little bit of an insight on the way that they both think, Frank and Sandi. And I wanted to put that in a podcast because it's nice to listen to. I think you can digest it and think of things a bit more clearer when it's in audio form. You can sort of frame it in your mind a bit better. So thank you for listening to my podcast, Sandi's letter and Frank's letter. I really appreciate it. If you haven't already, go and check out the video I made yesterday. It's the Grace Mullane case where Jesse Kempson, Tinder date, very first Tinder date on her birthday, unalived her and stuffed her in a suitcase. He was from the UK backpacking and ended up in New Zealand, and the monster absolutely took advantage. There's lots of CCTV in that case, and I've covered it quite extensively. I'd really appreciate it if you could go and check that one out. Thank you for joining me. If you enjoy my podcast, please put in the comments that you want me to continue doing them. If you enjoy them whilst you're going to sleep, let me know, because I love a good podcast when I'm falling asleep. And it would be nice for me to know that you enjoy listening to these whilst you drop off to sleep. Thank you to Detecive for sponsoring the video. Use detecive.co.uk. Use code PADDY with them for a motorized desk. Check out Patreon. Exclusive videos will be going on Patreon. There's free stuff on there. I've got a paid member on there. Gratitude, thank you to you. You are my paid member on Patreon. I really appreciate you. You'll be getting exclusive videos that are too sensitive for YouTube. There's free videos on there, like I said. The paid ones will be the more in-depth and the ones that I can't put on here. There's an option if you're a member on YouTube that you would be maybe a little bit better off if you like and enjoy things that I can't put on YouTube that are a bit more censored and you'd enjoy those more. Maybe go across to Patreon and join there instead of being a member on YouTube. It's totally up to you. Like I said before, my memberships on YouTube, the way they work is everybody gets the same access. I've always done it so it's fair, because I've always said if someone could only afford the cheapest membership on YouTube, they shouldn't lose out to someone if they can't afford the top tier. So I didn't want someone on the top tier getting more access than someone on the bottom tier. So I kept it fair, because I thought if people are going to pay for a membership, they're going to pay it anyway. And I just leave it for you guys to decide how much you want to pay, if that makes sense. And that way it keeps the access all the same for people. I didn't think people should lose out because they couldn't afford a higher membership, if that makes sense. So I've tried to keep it. I've probably lost money doing it that way, but hey ho, I'd rather keep it fair for people. Really appreciate all of you. Thank you very much, guys, and I'll see you on the next one. Remember, these cases, they can be emotional and stressful, but most of all, don't have nightmares, especially if you're already asleep. Party out. Yeah, saying here, just say, don't have nightmares.
Have nightmares, motherfucker.
I went to the beach. No, it doesn't sound right. The idea behind my... No, scrap that. The idea... fuck's sake. Welcome back, everybody. I hope you're all well. Today, in the podcast, We're going to look at Frank Ruzek Sr. and we're going to look at... No, scrap that. But it was always insinuated that she should... If you like, enjoy. If you like, enjoy. If his parents... Well, not his parents. No, that's wrong. Shit. In 2009, Shanann built her own house in Charlotte. Earlier on, I filmed the whole thing and I didn't put the microphone on. In 2009, Shanann built her own house in Charlotte. North. Shanann was eager to please his parents. Oh, no, actually. One thing I will say is, One thing I will say is, what? I'm recording. You've got to prepare. So every time we had cookouts, his mum and sister, they were quite distant. We weren't accepted. They made that, no. They made that, no. That's not making any sense, is it? So Shanann called people the next, and same with Shananna's really. Now, remember, this is Sandy's, fuck's sake, Sandy. I'm not blaming anybody, I'm not laying any inquisitions or in, no, that doesn't make sense. Finally, the girls were doing great. Other than earplugs put in, and being girls, what? Finally, the girls were going, finally, how can they be, oh, get it, scrap that bit.